All right, turn your Bibles to the book of Ruth. It's quite a bit at the departure from what we've been looking at. I think it's the first Old Testament book we've tried to do. Sandwich right there between Judges and 1 Samuel. It is a book of the history. It's a very narrow history. I mean, it doesn't talk about Israel in general too much. It's just one little family. What God had in mind, I'm only guessing. A book like this, so short, so concise, yet we're going to look at a couple things here that maybe that's why it stands out and was used. I'm not suggesting we question the Lord on this. I'm just saying, it might come to mind why this little book. But if you read it, it's a beautiful book for as short as it is. It's a beautiful story, her life, and all that transpires here. Though it, if you're going to try to turn it into a book to read, there wouldn't be much content there. You can read it in 15 minutes. You're done. So the book of Ruth takes place during the time of the Judges. Now, I've studied Judges here, I think, when Seth was teaching. So this is a time, there's no kings in Israel at this point. So this is after the days of Joshua. There are some things going on during the book of Judges, and a key to understanding it is probably the last verse of the book of Judges. And this is stated a couple times here in the book of Judges. We're not going to study the book of Judges, but I'm just saying, since Ruth takes place in that. But that last verse of the book of Judges, in those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did that which was right in his own eyes. So, one of the things that when you study in the Old Testament, there's some shock factor here. For instance, if we study the book of Judges and other places in the Old Testament, there's a certain amount of Christian shock. They'll say, "I don't understand. This is not this behavior. These standards, the way these people think." Well, the Bible is a progressive book, so that what God reveals in the book of Genesis is added to by what he reveals, say, like 5 books later. And then by the time you get to the New Testament, it's added to again. So if you only had the book of Genesis and that's all we could know, would we not be limited? We would be very limited. But yet, if you only had the book of Matthew, you would struggle. And you say, well, I don't see that. I'm not saying you wouldn't be a Christian. I'm saying you would struggle. You would struggle to understand. You would struggle to understand why. So God knows what he's doing. And we're not Jewish, but I can remember, and I'm not saying this to be an old man complaining about this generation. I just can remember when the church was more familiar with the Old Testament than what it is today. The Old Testament is the foundation. God, put this way, as the church began in the book of Acts, God started the church, and it was almost all exclusively Jewish. If you'd have started with Gentiles, the church would have been a mixture of paganism. It wouldn't have worked well. So the Jews had a foundation of faith. The Bible talks about from faith to faith, from the faith of the Jews to the faith of the Gentiles. The faith was, Jesus said, I came for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. I didn't come for these Gentiles. And somebody said, well, I just don't, that's not nice. It's not a question of nice or not nice. It's a question of strategy. And so God knew what he was doing. And thankfully the Gentiles were brought in. But anyway, I digress a little bit here. So we're going to look at the book of Ruth, and I'm trying to say, what does this matter? I'm not Jewish, I'm not this, I'm not that, so I don't care. Well, God cared, so that's why one of the reasons why we look at this, because he cared enough to have it in here. Second of all, it's important because it gives us more of God's heart than we would have otherwise. So, Ruth, we're going to find out she's from the country of Moab. So, a lot of stuff's going on right now in the Middle East, right? So, you've seen map after map probably on your, I don't know if you watch CNN or whatever, that's your problem if you do that. But Moab is Jordan, the country of Jordan, okay? So, just east of the Dead Sea would be Jordan. And so that's Moab. Moab, Lot was the man who, if you've read your Bible, Abraham's nephew is Lot, and Lot settled in Moab. So a lot of the history of all that we're not going to go into. If you know that history, you know that there are things that happen that you'd say, well, they had a bad start. But anyway, Moab, there's a prohibition in the book of Deuteronomy, I believe, where God said, I don't want you to take in the Moabites into your company. Into your company. There were some hostilities when the children of Israel were coming out of Egypt into Canaan. The Moabites weren't very friendly, so God said, I don't. Then there was also Balaam and Balak, and so if you know your Bible history, you know that the Moabites were not friendly to the Jews, and the Jews not friendly to them. The Moabites were idol worshippers. It's god Chemosh. There's child sacrifice possibly, temple prostitution, all sorts of things that would have made the Moabites icky to the Jews. But here we are, and we're going to look at a Moabitess woman. So this is not a spoiler. I don't go for that spoiler thing. If you talk to me and I tell you about a movie, I'll tell you all that about it. And if you don't, you shouldn't have asked me. So here's your spoiler. Ruth is going to be a great-great-great-grandmother of Jesus. And her husband that she's going to marry, his grandma was part of that lineage. And she wasn't a Jew either. She was a Canaanite woman. And then, of course, later on, you've got David and Uriah's wife. That wasn't a good situation. She's included in that. So if you go read in the book of Matthew, and if you go read in the book of Luke, the lineages, you'll see, not in Luke, but in Matthew, you'll see that these ladies' names are mentioned. Okay? Bathsheba's, her name is mentioned. Rahab's name is mentioned. Ruth's name is mentioned. So the Lord wouldn't do a thing like that. If he's going along only mentioning the fathers and the sons and the fathers and the sons, and then he stops and says, well, this one was born to this man of this woman, he wants you to know that. He wants you to pay attention to that. So that's one of the reasons why I say, you say, what's the book of Ruth for? Well, she figures into the lineage of Christ, and God points that out in the book of Matthew. So then there must be something he wants us to read and know about. All right. What else could we say? The law of Moses is brought out in this, but not so obviously. You have to think about it a little bit. We don't practice it, of course, but in this law of Moses, it had to do with the allotment of the land to the Jews, the land of Canaan. When it was divided up for the 12 tribes, and God was insistent upon this. Now the Jews didn't follow through. They never occupied and dwelt in the land that God gave them. I mean, they'd be living in Iraq. I mean, it was a big hunk of land, but they never fulfilled it. They didn't drive everybody out like God said. They didn't do this, they didn't do that. But in this law was contained this idea of this land is your land. And it's allotted to you. And we don't want anything to happen to that. That was God. That wasn't the Jews. So this has been a little foreign to us, but when a male died and he had no sons to carry on that name and to inherit that land, see, I would sell my house and maybe give the money to my kids, but I wouldn't expect them to take my house and my land and live on it if they didn't want to. It's like, I could care less about that land. But now that was different over there. And it was different under God. It was different for that people. This was specifically told them, this is your land. I'm giving this to you. They didn't have an option to say, well, I don't want to live here. Also, if the man died who owned, say he owned this piece of land, and he was a tribe of Judah, and he owned this parcel, he died, he had no sons, what happened to that land? The last thing, this was from God. You don't want that land to just go to anybody. You wanted to keep it in that family, in that tribe, the way it has always been. That was from God. So he felt so strongly about this that he said, so if that happens, then one of his brothers, the next in line, was to come and marry that wife. Now I know you're talking about polygamy here, if he was already married. And the first male child was born, was not his. It was his brothers, that were dead brothers. So the Sadducees even used this to try to trip Jesus up, remember? And they went through all this big story that they created to try to trip Jesus up about marriage. But so this is not Christianity, is what I want to make clear. But if you know that that's in the background, then it helps you understand what's going on here. The attitudes of things are going wrong for me, so God is not smiling on me. Things are going right for me, so God is now smiling on me. You're going to see that here. And, from a gospel standpoint, I think we would probably say that's not a good attitude. Yet, it's a human attitude. It's human thinking, but is that really, you don't see the Apostle Paul talking that way, or Jesus. So, again, this is progressive revelation. These aren't spirit-filled, blood-bought, on my way to heaven, glory be to God, I'm born again. That's not what this is. So, you're going to see some attitudes here that I'm not going to call them out and say they're terrible people. I'm just saying that's where they're at. And God meets them there and blesses them where they're at. And that's part of that heart of God I'm talking about. He's not bent on you fail, your attitude's not what I want it to be, or you don't live up to the letter of this or the letter of that, I kill you and strike you out. He doesn't do that. A lot of times that's how we see him, if you're really honest. A lot of times that's the way he sounds, but that's not always what he does. He's a lot more merciful than that. And let's get into it. Now it came to pass the days when the judges ruled that there was a famine in the land. And a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to sojourn in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. So to sojourn means he didn't intend on living there at all. He knew he had property back in Israel. But he felt like this was a good idea. There's no consulting God here. There's no praying about it. This is what I'm going to do. And he was an exception because everybody knew about this. And when his widow comes back with Ruth, a little spoiler here, they all know that's the family that left. So this was not seen as a heroic thing. This was seen as he bailed out. And the name of the man was Elimelech, and the name of his wife, Naomi, and the name of his 2 sons, Mahlon and Chilion, Ephrathites of Bethlehem, Judah. So if they're given us their tribe and their family and the whole deal. And they came into the country of Moab and continued there. And Elimelech, Naomi's husband, died. And she was left and her 2 sons. So she's faced the death of her husband, and now she's a widow, but she has 2 sons. And this is considered still okay in their culture. Yeah, I lost my husband, but I've got 2 sons, and they'll see to me. And they took them wives of the women of Moab. So we've already, right there is not, there's no commentary here. You'll know as you read the book of Ruth, there's not really any God said this and God said that. And I would think if it was that bad, God would have put something in there, but he doesn't. He doesn't say too much. He keeps quiet and just says, here's the story. So they're taking pagan wives, but you'll see that in the book of Judges. You'll see that throughout the Old Testament. For all the distinctions they make about the men are mostly mentioned and not the women because of the heritage and the passing on names and all that. Yet the women could be brought in easily by marriage, but not pagan men. It would be really hard to do. So they married, pagan meaning they don't worship Jehovah. And so they took them wives of the women of Moab. The name of the one was Orpah, and the name of the other Ruth. And they dwelled there about 10 years. So this gives us the whole setting now. The journey from Palestine, or from Israel proper, into Moab, foreign land, because of a famine. The death of the husband. The 2 sons marry Moabite women. And it's 10 years later now. And Mahlon and Chilion died also, both of them. And the woman was left of her 2 sons and her husband. So she's it. That's the way it's portrayed here. The daughter-in-laws are there, but it's just portrayed as that's all she's got now. She's empty. Then she arose with her daughters-in-law that she might return from the country of Moab. For she had heard in the country of Moab how that the Lord had visited his people in giving them bread. So this visiting his people, we'd have to go through the book of Judges, but we're not going to do that. But you would see that when they obeyed God, they'd use that expression, he visited his people. So it's true then that the concept of God blessing. So I heard this expression used not too long ago. It's a very accurate expression. People say, well, I'm going to live, I'm saved and my man is saved, but we're not married, but we're going to shack up together. And somebody said, well, God won't bless that. That's an accurate biblical statement. Okay? Now, lightning's going to strike? I didn't say that. House going to burn down? Didn't say that. Starve to death? I didn't say that. But it is an accurate statement to say that God's going to bless it. Now, does that mean everything is going to go wrong, and if you get married, then everything would go right? No. You're looking for a formula. So we're not talking about a formula here. We're just talking about you need not expect God. You reap what you sow. There you go. So if you go to the book of Galatians, 5th chapter, Paul talks about this idea of sowing and reaping. Now, he uses it specifically between the spirit and the flesh, but that idea is not only throughout Scripture, it's built into this world, this planet, this universe. That if you pour dirt into your water, you'll have dirty water. You reap what you sow. Okay, is that clear? We understand that, right? I mean, that's normal life. And so the people of Israel would go wrong and go after other gods and rebel, and God would send a famine. That's actually God's mercy. That's God's blessing, because he's saying, I'm not done with you. So when Daddy spanks, somebody says, that's not love. Yes, it is. If it's done properly. Now, you can do it wrong. You're not talking about beating somebody. So the famine must have been then, it's implied here that it was the hand of God. And it's also implied that God said, okay, that's enough, and I'm going to let crops grow and things come back. And so it said, she says, I've heard that he's visited the people. I want to go back home to my homeland. That's God's visiting his people. Wherefore she went forth out of the place where she was, and her 2 daughters-in-law with her, and they went on the way to return to the land of Judah. So they're traveling back, and at some point, before they got too far, or before they changed, or got beyond the point of no return, maybe, I don't know. But she stops and she talks to these 2 girls. And Naomi said unto her 2 daughters-in-law, Go, return each to her mother's house. The Lord deal kindly with you as ye have dealt with the dead and with me. So she says, I'll go back home. Don't follow me. God, you are good wives to my boys, and you've been good to me since they died. And God, may God bless you. And I'll farewell. She's given him leave to go. She goes into it pretty deep here, and so that it's important to pay attention. It says, the Lord grant you that ye may find rest, each of you, in the house of her husband. In other words, she's implying, go back home, get married, you're young, and God grant that you find rest. And this term of finding rest. So the culture was this. You're a woman, you get married, you have a husband to protect you, feed you, work for you, provide for you, you bear the children, and that's the rest. Okay, I'm set. Okay, I'm not. A little spoiler here: when these 2 ladies go back to Israel, there's no welfare. There's no soup line. There's no rescue mission. They got to eat and they got to live. So, with no males to do it, it fell to Ruth. So she had to work, and she had to take charity. So when she says, you go back home and find you men, and that way you'll have rest. May God grant it to you, that you go back home to the Moabites. Don't come with me. Stay back there. And you'll find rest, each of you, in the house of her husband. I hope you have a good life when you get married. Then she kissed them, and they lifted up their voice and wept. So it was tough. They didn't want to leave, didn't want to break up. And they said unto her, Surely we will return with thee unto thy people. We'll both go with you. We'll do it. Now, she's the mother, and she's older, and so she's plain. And Naomi said, Turn again, my daughters. Why will you go with me? Are there yet any more sons in my womb that they may be your husbands? So you say, well, I don't see the logic there. We're not from the culture either. So what she's saying basically is, I have no more sons to be your husbands. And there's no potential for that to happen. And so the implication would be, if I did, you could have them. Now, I know that would be like so foreign to our thinking, but I don't think she thinks this is strange. I don't think these girls think this is strange. None of them react that way. So in their minds, she's just talking plain talk. She's not talking about something that's foreign to their understanding. She just says, I don't have any more. She says, Turn again, my daughters, go your way, for I am too old to have a husband. If I should say, I have hope, if I should have a husband also tonight, and should also bear sons, would you tarry for them till they're grown? Would you stay for them from having husbands? So this is clear to me that this scenario she's talking about is simply her way of saying, you've got nothing if you go with me. She's not suggesting at all, or she's actually excluding the idea that you're going to come back with me and find husbands in Israel. She's thinking that will not probably happen. In fact, she has no reason at this point to think that it would. So the only thing that you would get by following me is hope that I would give you children, or have children and give you husbands. It doesn't make any sense. you can't wait. You're going to get tired of waiting. If I had a husband tonight, and if I could even bear children, how's this going to work out? So she's presenting a totally ridiculous scenario as a way of saying, it's pointless to come with me. Just stay here. There's ready-made men. It's plain talk, okay? Just plain talk. Logical. You're young. You're grown. You need husbands right away. It's not good for a woman your age to be like me. I'm a widow, but I'm old. You're young. You can't do that. You need children. You want to have a family and all that. All the things that fit into their culture. Probably expected in their culture. So she said, it just doesn't make any sense. It can't work out. So you've got to stay here. So that makes it really hard. She's made it as hard as she can for them to say, I'm going with you. She said, nay, my daughters, for it grieveth me much for your sakes that the hand of the Lord has gone out against me. Now here it is. So again, she's saying, God's hand has gone out against me. I'm living in a strange land. I've got no husband, no sons to take care of me. My only chance is to go back to my people, and maybe I could beg there or be some sort of charity case for them. And I got nothing to give you. And God's hand is against me, and it really grieves me because it's affecting you. That's what she's saying. Again, I'm not saying this is New Testament. Don't start getting up testifying in church and saying, God's hand's against me because I couldn't pay my gas bill. I didn't give you leave to do that. That's not Bible. That's not New Testament. But that's Old Testament. You'll see that a lot. All right, and they lifted up their voice and wept again. And Orpah kissed her mother-in-law, but Ruth clave unto her. So here's a crisis point in the book. When Orpah gives her a kiss, that's a kiss goodbye. Ruth don't kiss her. Ruth clings to her physically. She grabbed a hold of her. And she said, behold, thy sister-in-law has gone back unto her people and unto her gods. That's key to this book. If this statement is not established, if this moment is not established, we don't have any it doesn't make any sense what's about to occur. So the one sister leaves, Ruth stays, or the sister-in-law leaves, and the Ruth stays, and she challenges her, says, go back unto her people. She's gone back to her people and unto her gods. Return thou after thy sister-in-law. Now, I don't know if Naomi was giving her good advice about that, but that's how she felt. And not everything that's logical is not always spiritual. And there has to be some discernment. And Ruth said, entreat me not to leave thee. So when she says it, she said, I'm asking you to stop asking me to leave. Don't entreat me anymore. Don't say that to me. Entreat. When you entreat someone, you say, would you please bring me that? You're entreating someone to bring you an item. Would you please come over and help me do this? You're entreating someone to come to your house and give you a hand. So she's been asking her, please, would go back. And she says, please don't ask me to please go back. Or to return from following after thee. Let me follow you. For whither thou goest, I will go. And where thou lodgest, I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God, my God. She's renouncing her God and saying, I will follow your God. So that without that, I don't know that this story could really go on. I don't know that Ruth could really end up being what she was. But she'd made up her mind to not just, somebody said, well, that's just how much she loved Naomi. Okay, maybe that is it. But something was driving this woman. This woman said, I don't just want to go with you. I want to take on your God. I want to follow your God. Then she shows in this also that she knew that there was a God over Israel. So obviously, Naomi and Elimelech and Mahlon and Chilion, all of them had talked about the God of Israel. She understood this. And it's proven further by the fact that she says this, and this is an Old Testament saying you'll see a lot, where thou diest, I will die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and also, if aught but death, part thee and me. So this phrase is, I don't know, Jesus might not have appreciated too much. He's kind of funny about what we said, but when we start declaring things, he told us not to say, I swear, or anything like that. But now, in the Old Testament, it was a common thing to say, this is what I'm going to do. Oh, no, you're not. Yes, I am. Oh, no, I'm not. The Lord do so to me and also if I don't do this. So what they're saying is this. I promise I'm going to do such and such, and may God strike me dead, and even go further than that. In other words, you're saying, I'll let God, I'm calling on God to curse me after I'm dead. Talking about hell or something like that, okay? So this is the strongest statement I think they could come up with. And she knew that. She knew that statement. She'd heard that said before. She's familiar with, she's talking like she's Jewish almost in a way. So because she's lived with them. That's who her family is. And so she said, I'm going to go where you go, we'll live where you live. I'm going to accept your people as my own people, if whatever, how far that goes. And she didn't know how far that could go. Your God will be my God. I'm going to die where you die. I'm going to be buried in that land. Another concept we may or may not care about as Christians, we may say, well, after I'm dead, I don't care that much. For that culture, where you were buried, that was very important. So Abraham, he wants to purchase a certain piece of land, parcel of land to bury Sarah in. And, Sarah's buried there. And I think we can relate to it because our loved ones were there buried. I mean, how would we feel if we went to a cemetery and some of these knuckleheads had turned over all the stones and all that? I mean, it doesn't change the dead people, but it sure hurts the living. Hurts our feeling, offends our sensibilities. Well, to them, it was like Joseph. He said, when you leave Egypt, take my bones with you. I want to be buried in the promised land that I've heard about, not here in Egypt. So we still probably can understand this concept. And so she says, I want to be buried in your land. I'm abandoning my land. I don't want to be buried here. I want to be buried where you come from. So she's really latching on to her. I'll die where you die, be buried where you're buried, and may God kill me and curse me after that if anything but death separates the two of us. Till death do us part, I'm going to be at your side. When she saw that she was steadfastly minded to go with her, then she left speaking unto her. So after that statement, she says, okay, I'm done. I'm not going to say anything else. I think Naomi still thinks it's not a smart move. I think Naomi still thinks that, logically speaking, you're doing the wrong thing. But she's making all these protestations and she's called on the name of the Lord. I don't know. I'm not going to even talk to her about it no more. And she don't. So as we kind of close today, we're on our way back, and so the next scene, she's going to arrive in town, and we're going to sort of see it's not a good situation. It's gradually going to become a good situation, but remember, Naomi, though she's going back home, she has no right to the property. Again, it's a concept we can't grasp. But in this, we need a male heir, and they don't have that. So there's her. She could take Naomi or take Ruth by and say, "That's where I used to live," but that's not mine. I can't get it. It's in limbo. That's what it is. And so she's going to have to do some things here, and she's unknown. Naomi, people remember her, but they don't know who Ruth is, and they know she's a Moabite. Now, I don't know if by her dress, by talk. Maybe they knew because she's coming back from Moab. They knew that's where they went. Maybe she says, well, this has got to be one of those women from Moab. Maybe you could tell by the way she looked. Now, they're cousins. from way back, the Jews and the Moabites are. So I wouldn't think they look much different than each other, like their skin color or their hair or something like that. Maybe her dress, I don't know. But they knew that she was not theirs. And so there has to be some specific things are going to have to happen if they're going to survive and live. And fortunately, that's what God does for them. All right, we're going to get Vern to dismiss the Sunday school.